we're going for a ride today. I want engagement, taking in. I want people learning, reflecting, listening, and learning from each other and from others, and really seeing this is life, as we have it. So to start with, I'm going to read this week's poem that's called Thought Leader. Beginner mind is full of thought, busy and in charge of all, with no authority. Mind has other functions after thought. Thought is after thought, after. Move in, master mind. No thought, reflection of truth. Luminous door, reflecting both sides. If you think you just got that, you didn't get it. So today, I thought what I wanted to call this class. And it got to, who do we choose to be? We think we have choice, and that is why we remain committed to our not self. For me, it's both a joke and it's very sad, but that's where we are. We do have choice, and we end up choosing to identify with our not self and remain imprisoned forever. So that someone then sees me, Rohini, as removing their choice. Sort of funny, but that is how people see it. If they choose the not self. We have to know, experience that we are not our shrunken self. We have to know the difference between who we are and who we are not. At the very least, we have to know who we are not. And to that, we have to be willing to train the shrunken self, which is who we think we are, to turn in, and train it to let go of itself. That is so important. And that's what is meant using a wedge to get rid of a wedge. This is done by redirecting our attention, and therefore our will, out of our heads and into the direction of the heart. When the shrunken self lets go, we return to ourselves. That is choice, That is agency. To experience love, which is who we truly are, we have to let go of everything. Our narrative of who we think we are and what we think the world is. Now, there are people who are unsafe for teachers. If the teacher addresses an issue or anything that needs attention and change, the teacher is mean and cruel and insulting. So the teacher deserves to then be insulted. The teacher, hopefully as a teacher, is a learner. So then learns to say nothing. The student is then identified with good ideas of who and what they are and does not need to change, learn, or listen. In those cases, the teacher's addressing the student is an opportunity missed. A waste of time for everyone because it was not accepted. And many people see people that are teachers as just a nothing class or a parish situation where they go, great sermon, see you next week. Sad. So in order for these students to study with me, I need to be beneath them. Does anyone know why? Anyone know why? So they can have choice. They can have choice. They can pick and choose what they want to learn. They choose what they need. They know what they need. Because they know who they are. And who they are, from my point of view, is the not self, but that's what they've chosen, is who they are. In order to burn up karma, in other words, to clean up everything, we have to be on it 100%. We can't back off. We can't say, well, I'll do it tomorrow or I'll do it another day, because then we've missed the opportunity. So if a person walks out of a class and then backs off, they then can decide, oh, that education was just mean. They press a reset button and they get to stay where they've always been, knowing who they are, seeing the world as they want to see it, and nothing changes. They're wounded people. And there's a lot of wounded people out there in the world right now. And there's a whole spectrum of action that occurs from woundedness. Whole spectrum of action. But it's all dangerous. They see everything and everyone through the lens of their own pain. And when they turn in, they only turn in on their wounded, shrunken selves. These people have no core. And it's very prevalent. Their sense of woundedness and discomfort that is what makes them think they have a core. It is their woundedness, their sense of discomfort and woundedness. And they hold on tight to their pain, to their woundedness, to their sense of discomfort, and they see the world totally based on that. And then they act. And they feel completely justified. But there is no core. And that's not a core. That's hell. When they appear to feel, they are just indulging in sentiments. So even in this situation of here, when I say to turn in, they turn in on extravagant wounds. People understanding this? They are victims. And I'm going to say, it's all fake. They are turning in on themselves. And their idea of woundedness. Wounded feelings are their heart, in quotes. And being with their experience is just nursing and perpetuating that. It's incredibly superficial. But the more extravagant their feelings, in quotes, are, which is actually the more extravagant their thoughts are, the more they are convinced they see everything clearly. Now, Yoga Sutra 130 talks about sickness, dullness, doubt, carelessness, laziness, cravings, delusion, failure to reach a yogic stage, and inability to sustain a yogic state. These 9 and anything else that causes agitation are obstacles to yoga. They also lead to frustration, which is a vibration on top of a vibration. Agitation over a failure to still consciousness. Woundedness and the way they relate with the world through their intense core of woundedness is just an obstacle. Now, the Yoga Sutras also says, 131, mental pain, depression, anxiety, restlessness, nervousness, and hard breathing are the symptoms of a distracted mind. If we are experiencing these symptoms, then we have already allowed obstacles to get in the way of our practice. The symptoms don't cause distractedness. they express it. And if you look at that sutra, it doesn't say soul pain. It doesn't say heart pain. It says mental pain. So the person who is running around in woundedness, I'm so wounded. If you look at me as I'm expressing it, the only way to express it is to be up here in mental pain and anguish. There is no heart. There is no core. It is just a distracted mind having a ball, determined to be the center of the entire universe. And if we look at this point in the world right now, there are so many wounded souls. Wounded, 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 wounded. And from them, you start with a little thing, and then you watch to the final spectrum of destruction that they cause out of their righteousness that arises from their idea of valid woundedness. Valid, and they see clearly. They are full of hate. There is no love because there is no core. There is nothing. That woundedness is just an expression of hate. It's almost like a cover-up. And the truth is, they hate themselves. And they want to inflict it on everybody else. And they are committed to it. They've chosen. This is who I am. And it's so extravagant, that experience. It's more extravagant than any love God could provide. It is bigger, better than God's love. So it overrides anything that God could provide. So now, how do we get out of that? Or at least within ourselves, how do we face any element of that? And we have to choose between who we are not and who we are. And we have to know, at least willing to know, that every thought we have is not self. Every thought. The righteous thoughts, the good. And do you notice how the wounded have very different good thoughts than everybody else's good thoughts? And for a wounded, they tend to want to get back, jealous, envy, resent, a lot of resent. Don't deserve. There's no happiness for anybody else. There is no anybody else. So here's the dichotomy, and we started it earlier this week. Surrender to what is. Accept. The opposite is live in fantasy. The negative of surrender to what is, accept, is cave in. And the positive of live in fantasy is uphold the ideal. Remain faithful. Everybody see this one? Questions? Clear? Yeah.
So when I was doing this earlier this morning, what came up for me, just in regards to how I work with my family, was, is it possible that cave-in could be the negative of uphold ideal and remain faithful in some sort of situation? Like, I uphold the ideals of my family by caving in. So you could look at it as
Oh, totally. And remember, this goes also to the face the facts.
Yeah.
Face the facts. Opposite is delusional denial. The negative of face the facts is violent, wrenching from my reality, and disruptive. And the positive of delusional and denial is maintaining niceness, goodness. Right. So people who tend to be superficial and are wanting a kind of certain life, very much the New Age. New Age, positive thinkers, and that kind of a person. They are actually unwilling to face the facts and see reality because they think they're upholding ideals. So when they hear about someone else's learning or growing event, like you with your food, or anything on a very mundane level. Because let's face it, no matter how big we do, no matter what it is, when we as individuals are doing it, it's mundane. It could be an incredible life lesson. But if we are present to it and are actually doing it, it's mundane. It's material. It should be grounded because hopefully our feet are on the ground. We're here. So it's mundane. So it doesn't matter. And when we learn in small, we're contributing to then learning in greater and greater depth and universality. But for these kind of people who live in fantasy, are upholding ideals, they feel that makes them uncomfortable or feels too mundane for them. They don't listen. They're not going to listen until we start getting into those overarching universalities, universalisms. That's when it's so sweet and nice. And then all of a sudden they perk up. Because it doesn't apply to anybody at that point. So they would never like the third section of the Shiva Sutras. They're all about we're all one. The self is all. And that's it. And we just jump there. Just jump there. So they want to think in terms of absolute reality while all the time being stuck in hell. They wouldn't surrender to what is and accept what is because the belief is that they were, if they were to do that, they'd be caving in. And not upholding the ideals and the notion of universality. They wouldn't be spiritual anymore. How come we talk about devil dogs or apple pie? Why aren't we talking about all of God being so gorgeous and we just have this gorgeous sense? It's abstract. Until we're living in absolute reality and we're in 100% a-beta. And by the way, if we're in a-beta, we're not talking. We don't need to have a conversation. We don't even need to be in this room. Yeah.
So, would it be one of the ways that we would diminish you would be by asking you a question that is not about this universality alone, and because you would answer it, like if we ask your advice on something that's going on in our mundane lives, then we would ask you about it, and because you gave us an answer, we would choose to miss how deep.
No, would you do it? Would you actually do what I said to do?
No, because it wouldn't. It doesn't fit that universality. And so does that help us then to diminish you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It goes back to missed opportunity. Because if we do not learn in small, we cannot learn in big.
Selective sadness, not sadness.
Yes. It's back to I pick and choose what I do or don't do. And I'm going to say something really horrible right now. The people that made the decision to go to a buffet, a brunch, an Easter brunch, that's very mundane. And choose to see families and people, and push a button and blow themselves and everybody up. They made a choice. That is as mundane as you can get. And if we cannot learn what is clear, clean, and love in the simplest of actions, where our decision making gonna go? How twisted can we go in the mundane? So I am perfectly happy to work with people on their most mundane, confused, little, sorry, probably in the big picture, absolutely in the big picture, petty issues. Universality, we're all one. What are you worried about, your family or your this? Because we are here in relative reality. We each have physical bodies. We are dwelling here, each of us, with the spark of God within us. And are we willing to fulfill our destiny of learning to love each other? Or are we just going to be wounded, coreless choosers of misery? Those are the choices. So from talking about your food, have you learned?
Absolutely.
And has it spread into other parts of your life?
Definitely.
That's what it's about. God dwells within everything. So the tiniest of actions provides that key and clue to life. So I have no problem dealing with, should I do this or that? Well, if you do this, would you be loving? Would you love? No. Here, would you love? Yes. Then do that. And then I watch people then back off and pick and choose. Nah, or I'll do it for a short time. No, it's all the time.
And you've taught us that we have to do that practical application in order to have the experience.
We're living here. I don't know about you, but later on today I'm going to eat lunch. I got to walk to the bathroom. I got dressed. Thank God.
And then when we practically apply something that you told us to do, we have the opportunity then to have the experience that allows us to have the knowing.
Yes.
Which allows us to really understand the abstract.
Experiential.
Yes.
That's why I said you have to have the know, the experience of who you are and who you are not. And you have to train the shrunken self to turn in. And people believe they turn in and they get to their woundedness, and that's called turning in. And they don't want to do that. That isn't turning in. That's still so far out. You haven't even begun to turn in.
And for me, for this dichotomy, because I've been working with it, one of the things that's come out for me this week with it is choosing to love in the presence of no love.
Yes.
And recognizing that when I was able to do that later this week, I realized that was surrendering and accepting what is, and that if I hadn't done that, I would have actually been caving in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's exactly
And
it.
then that contributes to, of course, just living in the fantasy and not,
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm truly upholding ideals, then I would be surrendering to what is and loving myself in the presence.
Yes.
Because
What makes, yeah, because living in a fantasy is deciding that God didn't do it right. God did it perfectly. God is perfect. This is perfect. We say that prayer, this is perfect, that is perfect. If we take the perfect from the perfect remains. So those people who don't want to deal with it and they're just living in, they put the universality, they actually put universality on the top of hell. They're in hell and they're swimming and choking on their own hate and dirt. And it's so sad. It is sad. And this dichotomy is the way of the world for so many people. Can't accept, can't surrender to what is, because that would be caving in. That would not be being positive. I gotta be positive. It's all okay and fine and beautiful. The truth is, a lot of times, no, it isn't. It is perfect. I didn't say it was gorgeous. And so now in the world, the encouragement is to live in a fantasy. We don't want to have what is, and we don't want to face the facts. If you express the facts, you're going to get bombarded by people telling you you're cruel and mean and vicious and horrible for hurting their feelings by stating the facts. You're ruining my fantasy, is what they're actually saying. But what they say is, I'm upholding the ideals of love and truth. God is not anywhere near that. At some point, people have to accept that. And as to families, in some families, everyone is supposed to just agree to live in a fantasy. And nothing else matters. So no one is allowed to call anything what it actually is. So I would love to see fantasy translator. Because that's what these people do with what goes on in here and what goes on out in the world. They are fantasy translators. Different movie than what I'm saying, but it's wild. I'd love to hear their stories because it's a completely different story. And how many people out there actually care? People tend to just cave in. And they call that accommodating, being appropriate. They cave in as accommodators. They go along. So they look the part, but don't really. So when you like them because they're fitting in, they may in fact just be accommodating. in that moment, they just may be accommodators. You may like it. We may like it. Wow, they're really cool. But they don't. They don't see the difference between when they're accommodating and when they're fighting. They don't see the difference in how they're acting because they don't have a core. And we're fooled. And we have to be really, really aware of that. We first have to know ourselves and accept what is. So only people who have a core can truly care about other people. People who can step outside themselves because they have it in themselves to care for another being. Resonating, and I've said it before, resonating is not caring. Unless you have that core, unless we have that distance, unless we have that one-pointedness, the belief is, I'm just being myself. You like me when I'm here, and I don't understand why you don't like me when I'm in this place, because I'm just being the same. They don't see any difference. So when they are, in fact, appropriate, they may, in fact, be seeing that they're just caving in. They're just going along with everybody else. And so then they get angry and have to fight back. People believe that if they refuse to surrender to what is, that means they have a true voice that they are holding on to. They bring to the table the same refusal every time. So whether they are among people who are lovers or people who are haters, doesn't matter. They can't tell the difference because they're not even looking at anybody else. They don't see anybody else. And it doesn't even matter to them. All that matters is the rebelliousness, which they see as the maintenance of their own voice. That's all that matters. And their wound, yes, and of their wound. And that's it. That's 100% it. And so we have to accept what is. And not live in a fantasy believing that sometimes they're okay. These people don't understand that because they already know who they are, which is who they are not. So when someone provides instruction, they are not asking you to beat, they see themselves as asking to be beaten up by yourself. I didn't ask you to beat me up. That's what instruction is to them. They are asking for what? I don't want you to be beaten up. Approval. That's all they want, is approval. That's it. Approval. So I'm going to go back to that horror in Sri Lanka. What were those people choosing? Why did they choose to do what they did? They were getting somebody's approval. I promise you. No core. No core.
That's the danger of somebody with no core, which is they may, if they're picking and choosing, what you're seeing is a mixed bag as well. And so you might like them at certain times, or feel like they're fine at certain times. That makes them incredibly dangerous, because in a heartbeat they could be somebody or doing something else.
Because you got to understand, these people, nobody noticed them, which meant what? They fit in.
Only one, I think.
They fit in. So back to the instruction. So when somebody actually does provide instruction, what do they want, that person want? No, I'm saying, what does the person who provides the instruction want?
Your betterment.
To grow and learn. And to change how you operate. For your own good. And if you are beating up yourself, you're not doing any of those things. You missed the point 100 trillion%. And I got to tell you, most teachers on all levels, there are a few, but most teachers want you to learn, grow, and change. They're not asking you to beat up on yourself. They're not asking you that you need to, I'm asking you to abuse. I'm abusing you, so you now have to abuse yourself. That's not it at all. But if you've chosen that who you are is that wounded, extravagantly wounded person, there is no instruction that can be received. All that can be received for a nanosecond is you're terrific. That's it. You're terrific. And they go, and that's it. There's no learning, there's no growing, and they just stay committed, knowing the misery of their extravagantly wounded experience is true, is valid, is who they are.
If they step outside of that woundedness for a second, then they see that as caving in.
Exactly.
And then there's the backlash.
And then there's the backlash. So I looked at what's correct attitude when corrected. You have to face facts. You have to accept what is and be wrenched and know the difference between instruction and abuse. You can say, okay, I got it wrong. Okay, I got it. Let me try again. And as we keep at it, the anger that we got it wrong becomes less and less. The wrenching becomes less and less. Didn't work. Let's do it again. Do it again. And keep at it. We have to be good scientists and just be okay and then get to work consciously and not have a problem with it not working. Didn't work? Okay, I'll try it again. I'll try this. This one worked. Okay. And this goes in sadhana. I've said it and people go, oh yeah, oh. You have to love the process. The process is getting it wrong and stepping up to the plate and doing it again. And what's been good is you get feedback. Feedback is so cool. It's very important. Otherwise, you can live in your fantasy and upholding the ideal that you're the best cook in the world, the best artist in the world, the best writer, the best anything. And by the way, nobody's reading your work. Nobody's eating your food. Nobody's looking at your paintings. Nobody's anything. And that's how it works. The learning, facing the facts, surrendering to what is, accepting reality. So remember, what's fantasy? Taking what's not real to be real. What's impermanent to be permanent. What's not self to be self. That's ignorance. Avidya. Ignorance. So if somebody calls you ignorant because you're taking what's not real to be real, you got to go, you're right. Oh, I'm wounded. I'm wounded. No, you're ignorant. Accept it. And once we do that, once we have taken what's not self to be self, we lose our core in that delusion, that ignorance, that non-self. And then we are attracted to certain things based on that non-self. We are repulsed by certain things based on that non-self. And we cling to that non-self for dear life, the human condition. If we do not know who we are, if we do not know who we are not, we are completely in twisted love. Hell. And how do we get out of hell? Surrendering to what is. And when we surrender to what is, are we caving in? No. You have to know the difference between surrender and caving in. There's a big difference. But we think we are caving in if we are attached and identified and holding on for dear life to our not self, which is that amazingly, extravagantly wounded, shrunken self. And if you notice when you're talking to somebody who's so wounded, I tend to start to laugh at this point. If you haven't gotten lost in them, and you actually feel where their vibration is, they're totally in their heads. They're totally in their, oh, my. There is no here. You can't resonate and feel and clear with them in here. There is nothing in here. This doesn't exist in here. It's just a giant sandcastle and the wave is about to come. By some horrific fact that's so puny and mundane, silly.